you ever experienced your heart throb or overflow? We heard it today in our first reading from Isaiah chapter 60, that this will happen to Jerusalem, to Israel, God's people. I remember when I was in kindergarten and my class was learning Mother Goose's nursery rhymes. And we were each assigned a character, and we were to dress up and act out the story. I was assigned as Little Jack Horner, and I had never heard of that particular nursery rhyme before. I have heard of some of them, but not this one, so a brand new character for me. I was a little nervous. I had a speaking part. If you don't know who Little Jack Horner, let me tell you who he is. I, as Little Jack Horner, I have no idea how I dressed up. I don't have a clue. It was kindergarten. I sat in a corner eating my Christmas pie. I stuck in a thumb, and I pulled out a plum made of purple Play-Doh and said, "What a good boy am I?" Nailed the line. And when Little Bo Peep came to the center of the room, with the elegant way in which she moved, in this beautiful fluffy white dress, and the cute little way that she shrugged her shoulders to signify to everyone else she lost her sheep and she didn't know where to find them. My little heart, kindergarten heart, was throbbing, overflowing. I've never seen someone so beautiful. I was in awe of such beauty. And like Isaiah said, I was radiant because of what I saw. It's amazing what awe even a little kindergartner can experience. Now, eventually, my awe shifted from Little Bo Peep to Jesus. Now, imagine God's people, Israel. Back in Isaiah's time, they were down and out. We heard Isaiah say, "See, darkness covers the earth. Thick clouds covers the people." Instead of kings coming to give them treasures, their treasures were taken from them, and they were in exile. Israel was. When God chose Isaiah to prophesy of God's goodness and faithfulness, that even though Israel was not faithful to God, hence they were suffering the consequences, God would remain faithful, and Israel was told through Isaiah that they should rise up in splendor because the glory of the Lord shines upon you. That's what we heard today. Instead of kings conquering Israel, we heard Isaiah prophesy, "Nations shall walk by your light, and kings by your shining radiance." What causes someone to be radiant? Besides Little Bo Peep. God himself. Therefore, you shall be radiant at what you see. Your heart shall throb and overflow. And what did we proclaim? What did we sing in our psalm today? Psalm 72. Lord, every nation on earth will adore you. While our gospel then in certain ways fulfills Isaiah's prophecy that kings shall come from nations bearing their treasures. And we hear the wise men, the kings of the east, these magi, come from the east, and they did homage to the little child Jesus and opened their treasures before him, bearing gold and frankincense and myrrh, each with a very specific purpose towards Jesus being the fulfillment of all the priests, prophets, and kings. God incarnate is now made visible not just to his faithful, but to the nations, represented by the Magi. Because he was first made present to the shepherds. Well, again, the shepherds they're part of God's people, Israel. But the Magi were travelers from the east who were focused on God. Interesting that these outsiders would be more focused on God than many of God's insiders. Because even at the time of the birth of Jesus, there was still a darkness over the people. It was Jesus who comes to fulfill Isaiah's prophecy. He is the light that shines in the world. And for those who would be in awe of him, who would choose to focus on him, they too would be radiant. Do you know of anybody who has encountered the Lord and is just now radiant? It's like they're a different person. Their face shines. They're in awe of who they have met. Awe in the goodness of God. And what should we do with this goodness if we have encountered the Lord and our hearts are overflowing with this awe of the Lord? I think it's quite good what we hear from St. Paul. As he writes to the Ephesians in chapter 3, he says, "You have heard of the stewardship of God's grace that was given to me for your benefit." God is pouring out his grace upon us. What should we do with it? We should keep it to ourselves. Just like I should grab onto Bo Peep and make sure no one else gets her. She's mine. Like, that's a little creepy. Yeah, even for a kindergartner. Don't do that. Stop that. Let her go. And I never did, don't worry. I was so in awe, I memorized the one line, and then I couldn't even speak to her. I was just like, well, it's just nothing. I lost all confidence every time I got near her. Right? She's just too beautiful to speak to. But when my attention shifted to Jesus, eventually Jesus gave me the confidence to proclaim his goodness. Now, some of you, as your heart was throbbing and overflowing for the love of another person, the Lord gave you confidence to speak about that person to everyone you met. And you wouldn't shut up about this person. Finally was like, yes, I know, you met the love of your life, your soulmate. Okay, I get it. Go away. It's not an absolute sign, but a pretty good sign that there's a vocation there. Right? My vocation is to the priesthood because he gave me confidence in how did Paul say? To be a steward of God's grace, not to keep it to myself, but to be a steward of it for your benefit. But it's not just for me. to do this because God has given you his grace. And you are to be a steward of his grace so that the people around you will benefit. Your family, your neighbors, your coworkers. And each person is going to benefit in a unique way. And it's up to your conversation with God to let him reveal to you how he wants to be revealed to your family member, your coworker, your neighbor. Are you open to that? Open to hearing from God guide you. Open to his light, not just a star in the sky, guiding you to a location, but his light shining in your heart, guiding you to a person sometimes, your neighbor, your family member, and what to say or what to do. What are we to do? We are to do what the Magi did, bear our gifts to the Lord. That's what we do here at every Mass. So we come with our own gifts. Here's what's been going on today or this past week, Lord. Here's who I am. Because there is no greater gift than yourself that you can offer God. And everything that has gone into your life thus far. And instead of clinging to it and keeping it to yourself, as bad or as good as that might be, like your experiences, just give it to the Lord. It's actually greater than what the Magi brought. Gold and the frankincense and the myrrh, because those were signs that benefit us to understand who Jesus is, but for us to just give our whole selves to the Lord. And in a sign sort of way, the way you do that, it's signified by how the gifts of bread and wine are brought forward and brought to this altar. And then God receives our gifts as we offer them to him. We start off first with the bread, and then we offer up the wine. And we say, "Blessed be God forever." And God receives them, and then he gives his greatest gift to us. He reveals to the nations, the Gentiles, that's you and I. Unless some of you actually do have Jewish heritage, well then you're Jewish, but everyone else is a Gentile. And reveals to us his son Jesus. After the words of consecration, Jesus becomes present to us now. And it's an exchange of gifts, ourselves for God's self. And if we are in communion with God, we believe, we've been living it, we've been practicing our faith, then it's appropriate for us to receive communion. If for whatever reason we're out of communion, then it doesn't make sense to receive communion. It would be an inauthentic sign, an inauthentic expression. We'd be lying, and we don't ask you to lie. We want authenticity here. Even if it's more important to give your whole self to the Lord, even if at this particular moment you can't receive the Lord in the Eucharist. It's more important to abandon yourself to God. To turn your attention, to allow your heart to be in awe of the bright light of Christ. He's a bright light because he's the one who brings freedom. He's the one who brings hope. He's the one that gives us courage to live differently, to live beyond ourselves, to be a steward of God's grace for the benefit of others. As we celebrate this Epiphany, allow God to reveal himself to you. And allow yourself to be in awe of him and to give your very self as a gift to him. And continue to follow him wherever his light leads you.